The only reason they let me hold a rifle was because they thought I wouldn't know what to do with it. My name is June Palmer. I live in a sunburnt town just past the edge of nowhere, a place where the desert air bites harder than most people's words, but not quite as hard as their silence. I've got one neighbor, 3 cactus plants I've named out of boredom, and a truck that won't start unless you whisper prayers to it. I'm 49. Widowed. My husband, John, was a decorated Marine and the best man I ever knew. He passed away 2 years ago, quietly, in his sleep, after fighting a cancer he didn't tell anyone about, including me. That kind of betrayal might sound cruel, but I understood it. He was a protector until the end. Always shielding me, even from grief. Since then, I've been alone. People see a quiet woman, hair graying at the edges, walking to the library in a faded denim shirt and think I'm soft. And maybe I was. Until recently. It started with a break-in at a ranch 10 miles south. 2 men armed with military-grade gear took a family hostage for supplies. The whole town panicked. Then came the Flyers, Community Defense Initiative, Join Now. It was organized by a man named Randy Leeds, ex-army, barrel-chested, always squinting like someone just insulted his masculinity. He strutted around in desert camo like he still had a rank to protect. I knew the type. John used to call them loud brass with no bullets. Still, I joined. Not to play soldier. I joined because I was tired of feeling small. I figured if I could learn something useful, how to hold a weapon again, how to protect myself, I could reclaim a piece of myself I'd buried with John. What I didn't expect was to become the program's punchline. From day one, I was treated like a ghost with a clipboard. They put me on spotting duty during drills, told me to sit tight, while the men handled the real work. When I asked to join a live fire session, Randy barked, "Don't worry, Grandma, you won't be needing to shoot that thing." The others laughed. I didn't. It wasn't just the words. It was the way they looked right through me, as if the fabric of my shirt was more qualified to be there than I was. Even when I followed every rule, ran every checklist, and pointed out tactical gaps, they ignored me like static in their ears. During one night exercise, I noticed a blind spot along the eastern perimeter, just past the rocky ridge where the floodlight didn't quite reach. I raised the concern. 3 times. First to Randy, who waved a dismissive hand. Then to Darren, his deputy, who told me, "You just worry about the comms." And finally to the group, just before the exercise began. No one listened. That night, a junior cadet tripped on loose ground, panicked, and fired a blank round 3 feet from another man's ankle. No one said anything. They all brushed it off like it never happened. Later, over beers, I heard one of them joke, "Just lucky June didn't have a heart attack from all the noise." I didn't go home that night angry. I went home hollow. I sat out back under the open sky, my boots sinking slightly into sand still warm from the day's sun. Above me, the stars stretched endless, cold and indifferent. I clutched John's old dog tags in my hand and let the tears come. Quiet. Controlled. The kind of cry you don't let ruin your face, just your chest. I remembered the way John used to train young soldiers behind our house. How he'd teach them not just to shoot, but to listen, to wind, terrain, breath. He'd line up 5 soda cans and make them hit all 5 in 5 seconds flat. I was always there, just outside the frame. Taking notes. Watching. Learning. He used to say, "The ones who don't talk much often shoot best." When I stood up, something in me had shifted. Not in anger. Not in vengeance. But in certainty. I walked to the old shed out back. The one with the rusted lock and creaking hinges. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. Inside, beneath a dusty tarp and a photo of John in uniform, was the trunk. The steel was cold against my fingers. It took me 3 tries to remember the combination. Inside were memories. His range notebooks. Our old spotting scope. A modified rifle sling he designed for reduced recoil. And beneath all of that, my own notes. Stacks of them. Written in my handwriting. Dated over the years. Marked with titles like Wind Compensation Above 500 Yards, Double Drift Theory, Silent Loadouts for Civilians. I wasn't just a widow. I was a student. A record keeper. A witness to a man's legacy, and perhaps, his rightful successor. I held one of the notebooks to my chest and whispered, "You never thought I was weak, John. Time to show them why." The next morning, I drove 30 miles out to a remote canyon and set up a new kind of classroom. One with no egos. No sneers. Just the wind, the rifle, and me. I started small. 10 rounds. Then 20. Then crosswinds. I trained in secret, never missing a library shift. By day, I shelved books. By dusk, I honed my aim. And every night, I wrote in a fresh notebook labeled Project June. No one saw it coming. And that was exactly the point.
The mornings came colder now. I was up before the sun, long before the coyotes stopped howling. My boots crunched against gravel as I crossed the backyard toward the canyon ridge, rifle case in one hand, notebook in the other. The air was crisp, dry, quiet, perfect for learning the language of wind. Each morning was a lesson. By the third week, I could tell the difference between a 10-knot breeze and a lazy desert swirl just by how the sagebrush bent. I practiced breath control, inhale 2 seconds, slow release, until my body moved like a machine. I learned to shoot between heartbeats. It's not just about pulling the trigger. It's about stillness, decision. But even the sharpest minds need sharpening stones. Enter Elias Green. He lived half a mile down the dirt road, tucked inside a dusty A-frame with a crooked American flag and an oxygen tank that wheezed louder than he did. Word was he'd been a sniper in Vietnam, until a landmine took half his calf and most of his faith in government. I approached him one afternoon with a thermos of black coffee and a question. "How do you make a bullet curve?" He gave me a side glance, more amused than surprised. "Depends who you want it to hit." Elias had sharp eyes, military eyes, but time had softened the rest of him. We talked for hours. I told him what I was working on. Didn't name names, didn't need to. He knew. Everyone in town knew about the Boys Club militia, playing soldier up north. He called them peacocks with scopes. He agreed to help. Twice a week he sat beside me on the ridge. He didn't say much, but when he did, it cut through the noise. Too much shoulder. You're pulling, not pressing. Wait for the wind to work with you, not against. He was my silent drill sergeant. A relic, yes, but still sharper than any man in that camp. Then there was Layla, my daughter. She came home from Phoenix for the weekend, a bundle of ambition and sarcasm in a power blazer. 22 and already interning at a law firm, chasing courtroom dreams. She found me oiling the bolt action one afternoon and froze. "Mom, is this your midlife crisis or something worse?" I smiled. "Just a project." She raised an eyebrow, then leaned in. "You haven't looked this alive in years." She didn't press. She didn't need to. Later that night, over tea, I told her everything. When I finished, she said, "I'm proud of you. But be careful. Men like that, Randy, they don't lose gracefully." Her words stayed with me. So did her next sentence. "You ever need someone with legal claws, you call me." And I would. But not yet. In the meantime, I started keeping records, not just of my shots, but of theirs. Every time I attended a training session, I brought my old camcorder. No one noticed. I wore it strapped around my chest under my jacket, lens peeking through a slit button. I filmed the drills. I filmed the mistakes, the missed targets, the bad posture, the sloppy reloads, the joking during comms. One video showed Darren adjusting his sights in the open while the drill simulated enemy fire. Another showed 2 men arguing during a live-fire exercise, muzzles waving like flags. But the real gold came during a planning meeting. Randy left his clipboard on the table when he stepped out to take a call. I wasn't snooping. I just looked. There it was. A single-page report, half covered in coffee stains. Incident 00318-ND, Fort Hood, internal resolution. A negligent discharge report. Randy had fired a live round during a routine inspection on base years ago. The shot shattered a storage crate and nearly hit a junior officer. The case had been scrubbed clean. Labeled internal resolution. No formal punishment. But someone had printed it anyway. I snapped a photo and sent it to myself. The metadata confirmed it came from a classified personnel folder, one only a close connection could have accessed. Nepotism. Hidden history. Ego masking failure. And it explained a lot. The man wasn't just arrogant, he was insecure. Threatened by competence. Especially when it wore lipstick and came from someone he couldn't bully into silence. That's when I remembered Maria. She had joined the program 2 months before me. Always eager, always asking questions. I hadn't seen her in weeks. Rumor was she quit after leads humiliated her during a drill, mocking her grip in front of the unit and calling her private cupcake. I called her. We talked for nearly an hour. She cried when I told her what I was doing. "You're doing what I was too scared to," she said. "Let me know if I can help." I thanked her. I meant it. That same week, Randy made an announcement. A regional skills showcase was scheduled 3 weeks out. Local militia units from neighboring towns would compete in drills, marksmanship challenges, and strategic simulations. Media would be present. Civilians could watch. It was meant to boost morale and showcase readiness. He couldn't wait to shine. He signed his unit up that same day. Talked about it like it was a parade in his honor. I signed up too. Not through him. Through the open participant registration line. As an independent. When I asked if civilians were allowed to compete, the organizers said yes, if they passed a basic safety test. I aced it in 6 minutes. No one from Randy's camp knew. Not yet. My name was buried on the list like a fuse under sand. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table and drew up the schematic for my final shot. 2 targets. 1 shot. Wind-assisted curvature using terrain to mask the delay. If I pulled it off, it wouldn't just be the shot of the day. It would be the shot of a lifetime. I set down my pen and looked out the window, where the desert swallowed the horizon in silence. Then I whispered to no one, "Let them underestimate me one last time." The wind was already dancing by the time I arrived at the showcase. It kicked up the dust in little curls around my boots as I stepped out of my truck. Old, unpolished, the kind of ride that said I didn't come to impress. I wore plain jeans, my husband's faded ball cap, and a button-up that didn't hug the spotlight. And still I could feel eyes on me. Someone near the tent chuckled. Did she get lost on the way to the bingo hall? Another voice, hushed but sharp. Is she actually competing? I didn't look at them. Didn't need to. My name was on the roster, listed dead last, right below a teenager from Quartz Junction who'd accidentally discharged his weapon during a turkey shoot. Perfect. I made my way to the check-in table and nodded to the organizer, a tall man in pressed khakis and aviators who looked like he ironed his water bottle. He blinked at my form, then squinted. "Miss June Palmer?" "That's right." His expression faltered. "You're solo?" "Yes." He cleared his throat. "All right then. You'll be last in the marksman showcase. We've adjusted the list." I didn't have to guess who adjusted it. I saw him moments later. Sergeant Randy Leeds stood in the center of his unit, arms folded, barking orders like a man trying to summon thunder. His unit wore coordinated desert camo tees, tactical vests, and smug expressions. Like they'd rehearsed their entrance for days. The moment his eyes landed on me, the mask slipped. For half a second, something passed across his face. Not confusion. Irritation. He turned to the announcer and whispered something, then patted his clipboard. A subtle smirk returned to his lips. I kept walking. I didn't come for greetings. The event began with the usual fanfare. Local officials, a small crowd, and 3 camera crews. 2 from local news. 1 from a civilian militia podcast streaming live. Each unit had 2 tasks. A precision shot under time pressure, followed by a creative challenge, something unorthodox to show tactical thinking. I watched as the men cycled through. They shouted commands. They posed for the crowd. They missed wind shifts, overcompensated on recoil, and scattered their patterns like popcorn. One guy nearly shot a target stand. Another forgot to reload between drills and blamed his jammed mag. Randy was last of his squad. His presentation was polished, practiced. He landed 3 bullseyes, then did a flashy reload flip that earned a cheer from his team. But his spacing was tight and too predictable. His final shot wavered. He smiled anyway. He thought he had the day locked. Until the announcer tapped the mic, "Final shooter. Independent. June Palmer." For the first time the field went still. I walked onto the platform alone. No unit. No handler. Just me and my rifle. An older bolt-action model I'd modified myself. Whispers floated in the breeze. Is this a joke? Who let her up there? She's gonna embarrass herself. I didn't look at them. Instead, I looked at the challenge I'd submitted privately, the double drift shot. 2 steel plates staggered at uneven distances, first at 700 yards, second at 820, set apart at an angle. Crosswind 15 knots. No electronic sights. No assistance. Just breath. Meh. And time. Shooter ready? I nodded once. I steadied my feet shoulder width. Let my muscles go slack. Breathed in. Counted. Waited for the breeze to lull just half a second. Then squeezed. The sound cracked through the canyon. A metallic ping followed, sharp, clear. The first target spun. Then silence. Then click. The second plate dropped. Gasp. The crowd stood still, caught between disbelief and awe. Even the wind seemed to stop. I stepped back from the rifle, eyes still on the targets. The announcer's voice cracked. Ladies and gentlemen, that was 1 round. The steel plates were retrieved and set side by side. The entry points, dead center, aligned. 1 bullet. 2 impacts. Physics-assisted, wind-accounted, stagger shot. A feat no one had practiced. A feat no one had expected. Until now. The moment shattered when Randy barked, "Check her gear." He stormed onto the platform, pointing at the rifle. "She's using a smart scope. That was a calculated rig shot. No way she pulled that off raw." I didn't flinch. A tech specialist stepped up, examined my gear and shook his head. No electronics. No assist. All analog. A reporter from Channel 6 murmured, "That's a world record trajectory, by a civilian woman." The camera lights found me. Journalists surged forward. "Ma'am, can we get your name? Were you military trained? What's your technique called?" I said nothing. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a thumb drive. "Everything I used," I said, handing it to the nearest reporter. "My notes. My training. Open source. For any woman who ever wanted to learn, but didn't have the space to try." It spread like wildfire. That night, 3 stories aired, each with a different spin. The local podcast called it, "The Shot That Broke the Brotherhood." Channel 6 titled it, "Librarian Outsmarts Militia in Desert Standoff." But the real story was deeper. Once her name hit the headlines, they dug into me. And into Randy. They found my late husband's military record. His sniper legacy, the very one Randy once quoted as doctrine in his workshops. They also found the videos. The footage I'd taken. The botched drills. The safety violations. The nepotism. And that little coffee-stained report from Fort Hood. The story ran within 48 hours. Former officer with sealed misfire record running civilian defense program? Within a week, an emergency board was called. The town mayor himself, an old friend of John's, reached out to me. "I saw the shot," he said. "But more than that, I saw the preparation. We've had the wrong people running this town's protection. I'd like to offer you a role in rebuilding it, properly." I asked one question, "Can I choose my team?" He smiled. "Absolutely." The first person I called was Maria. She cried when I told her. The second was Layla. She didn't cry. She just said, "Took them long enough." Within a week, 4 more women rejoined the training program. This time under my leadership. Randy? He was suspended pending investigation. They say he's threatening legal action. Let him. Because the only shot that mattered was already fired, and it echoed loud enough for the whole town to hear. The dust didn't settle overnight. But when it did, the wind carried something new. Not fear. Not whispers. Not judgment. Respect. In the weeks that followed the showcase, the town's community defense group was stripped to its studs. An emergency oversight committee conducted internal reviews. The board that once rubber-stamped Randy's every move now held closed-door meetings about restructuring, liability, and leadership. The boys' club lost its teeth, and people started talking. Not about what I did wrong, but about what I did right. Enrollment surged, though not from the usual suspects. Women. Young ones. Older ones. Single moms. Retired school teachers. A nurse who had never held a firearm in her life but said, "If she can learn it, maybe I can too." I didn't open the door. I held it. The program became something new. Something real. We dropped the camouflage and theatrics. We focused on clarity, safety, precision. Theatrics were for insecure men. We were teaching survival. And still I refused the spotlight. Even when a national defense blog ran the headline, "Desert Librarian Lands Impossible Shot, Rewrites Civilian Training Standards." Even when 2 instructors from the State Guard reached out, asking to review my training notes for their own recruits. Even when they invited me to speak at a regional safety summit in Nevada and called me, God help me, a tactical visionary. I smiled, said thank you. But I didn't go. Because real change doesn't start behind a podium. It starts where it always did, with boots in sand, breath in your chest, and the sound of silence before a shot. Randy Leeds never made a formal statement. No apology. No defense. Just vanished. Some said he moved to a town 2 counties over. Others heard he was fighting to protect his pension. But the Department of Veterans Affairs launched a quiet investigation into his record. Someone had reopened that old ND report. Apparently it wasn't the only one. The town froze his retirement benefits pending inquiry. His inner circle? Gone. Darren took a construction job out of state. The others faded into regulars at the bar, muttering about how things used to be. The toxic brotherhood fell apart faster than it was built. Not from fire, but from silence. They were undone by the very thing they feared, a woman who didn't need to shout. Elias showed up for our first official training session. He sat in his lawn chair at the edge of the range, oxygen tank at his side, and a ball cap that read U.S. Army Sniper tilted just enough to shade his eyes. I ran through the warm-up drills, line formation, weapon safety checks, dry fire simulations. When I called for live rounds, I saw him nod. Just once. After the final shot cracked and the target dropped, he clapped. Slow. Deliberate. When I walked over, he handed me a worn cartridge he'd kept since Vietnam. You earned this, he said. You're the best shot I've seen since Nam. And not just with bullets. Layla came home more often after that. She sat in on a few sessions, took notes, even helped design the liability waivers. But what made me proud wasn't the paperwork. It was her purpose. She'd requested a department change at her firm. Left corporate litigation. She was now working pro bono cases for female veterans and whistleblowers, those who had been silenced, overlooked, retaliated against. They won't be quiet anymore, she told me. Not on my watch. It turns out the bullet didn't just change the target. It changed the trajectory of those around me. Maria? She stood beside me every Tuesday and Thursday as assistant instructor. She rebuilt faster than I expected, steadier, louder, and with a focus that stunned even me. One morning she stopped a rookie in his tracks. His grip was wrong. His stance was shaky. He joked about it, tried to laugh it off. Maria didn't laugh. She looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Do it again. And this time respect the weapon, and yourself." He did. And when he hit the target dead center, it wasn't just his arms that steadied, it was his face. His posture. His awareness. That was Maria's magic. She turned second chances into transformation. Eventually I returned to the library. I still shelved books. Still hosted children's reading hours. But there was one change. In the central display case where old war memorabilia once gathered dust, I placed a single object, John's rifle. I polished it, cleaned the chamber, mounted it upright on a walnut base. Next to it a brass plaque. He taught the best. She became better. A small line of visitors stopped to read it every day. Most smiled. A few teared up. One man took off his hat and stood still for nearly 5 minutes. Not a word passed between us. He didn't need to say anything. Some truths hang heavier in silence. A month later, the town held a ceremony. No fireworks. No marching bands. Just community. They renamed the training site Palmer Range. I didn't want it, but I accepted it. Not for glory. Not for legacy. For every woman who needed to see that patience, intelligence, and quiet strength could change the course of something broken. And now, the wind still speaks out here. But it speaks to me, not over me. When I walk the ridge at dawn, I sometimes bring a new trainee along. Show them the terrain. The rise. The way the air curls differently in July than it does in March. And if they ask how I learned all this, I don't give them a speech. I hand them a notebook. And I say, start listening. Sometimes justice doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rebuilding what was broken, with calm hands and a steady aim. And for the first time in years, I didn't just hear silence when I squeezed the trigger. I heard respect.